We're going to look at compositions of transformations now. A composition is when you are performing two transformations on a figure. You have to do them in a certain order. We're going to look at some different notations that we might be asked to use for this. One of the notations, and it's kind of our goal to get to it, is this notation on the right. And the way that they are writing this has this little circle in between two different rules. And it's very important that you do these in the correct order. So we need to talk about this notation and how to know what to do. So when you see that little O, that means you're doing a composition. We've seen this in algebra where they might have had two functions and they're doing like f of g of x. And so when they're doing this, it means to take your g of x and plug it into your f of x. So that means you're going to be starting with the g of x. So with the composition of transformations, the one on the right is the one that you do first. And the one on the left is the one that you apply second. So you have to be very careful of the order that you are doing these, because if you do the wrong one first, it will result in a different answer. So the order matters and is very important. We are going to be taking, I might as well finish that question over there. We're taking triangle DML, and we are first translating it with that rule of the x is not changing at all. That's what that 0 means. And 1 means we're going to go up 1. And then it's followed by a second step, which is a reflection over the line x equals 2. Capital R for reflection. X equals 2, telling you the line of reflection, which is a vertical line at x value of 2. So I'm going to take the triangle DML, which is graphed, and when I made this graph picture, it was kind of hard to see the x and y axis, so I made them in a different color to help them to stand out. And we are first going to do the translation, which will move each point up 1. So that's the first thing we want to do. So moving D up 1 to make D prime, moving M up 1 to make M prime, and moving L up 1 to make L prime. And that is our first step. Our second step is to apply the second transformation to the current image. So the one in green, we are going to apply the rule that I have highlighted there in orange, reflecting in the line x equals 2. So the line x equals 2 is a vertical angle at the x value of 2, a vertical line at x equals 2. And we are going to count in a perpendicular direction with this line, so counting, horizontally. M prime was 1 to the left, so 1 to the right is where you'll put M double prime. L is 1, 2, 3, 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. There is L double prime. And then D prime is 1, 2, 3 to the left, so 1, 2, 3 to the right, D double prime. And there is our resulting figure after the composition of transformations. Now let's do number 1. Number 1 has it very clearly written. A, translation, x plus 4, y plus 10. Followed by B, rotation of 90 degrees. So when they give it to us like this, they're just telling us do this in this order. And they gave us our original points at the top. So if we are to perform this composition of transformations, we can graph and count, or we can apply the rule and write the new coordinates. If they told me I had to graph, I would then of course have to graph my figures. Just notice that this isn't really telling me that I have to graph anything. So I'm going to apply the translation first to get my new points. So like G prime, if I add 4 to the x, I will be at 3. And I'm looking up here at original G. If I add 10, I'll be at 7. H prime, if I add 4, 7, because here's H, and add 10, 6. And then I prime, Adding 4, I was at 4, so that's 8. And adding 10 to negative 8 is 2. And j prime will be at 4, 3. So you can just apply this rule onto those points to get your first new figure. And then you take those points that you just got and you apply the 90-degree rule to get the second figure. So the 90-degree rule is that your x and y switch places and your new first changes sign. That's the 90-degree rule. So I'm going to take the points like from G prime there. To get G double prime, I'm going to switch the x and y, change the sign of the first. To get the H prime, I'm going to switch the spots, change the new first. To get the I, should be double prime, I'm going to switch the spots, change the new first, and the J double prime, switch the spots, change the new first. And then I have the resulting figure. So if they wanted me to graph these, of course I would graph them. This didn't really say that, so I'm just going to skip it for now. That would be the resulting image after the transformation would have those coordinates. Here they want us to describe the composition of transformations, and when we ask this, we usually will only give you the original and the final spot. But on the notes here, they have a middle piece. That middle piece kind of ensures that we're all going to get the same answer. But if they don't give us that middle of the road figure, then we might have different answers than each other. I just want you to know that that's okay. There are more than one way to do a composition of transformations. For example, if I'm looking at this one here, I want to go from the yellow to the pink. I can see that the letters A and B were originally on the bottom of the figure, but at the end they're at the top. That means that you have either rotated or reflected. If we look at how this image is, it's not twisted in any way. If it's like tilted funny, that would be like a rotation. I can see it is just like flipped over and then moved to the right and up. So if they didn't have the shape that says A prime, B prime, C prime, which is right here, then I could have reflected in a different line. Like maybe I reflect in the line y equals 1, and that would put the figure higher up in the graph. And so it would be an option if they didn't have that figure that we're looking at. So I'm looking at this figure here, and I want to practice that composition of transformation notation that we want you to go for, which is to have the little O thing in the middle. We're going to have parentheses. We're going to have two transformations, and we are transforming triangle ABC that we're going to translate. Let me double check. They had that in parentheses, so I'll go ahead and do that. All right. So the one on the right is the one that's going to be first, and the one on the left is the second in the composition. So the first thing that we're going to do to get from my A prime to my A double prime there is we're going to reflect. So we are going to reflect, and we are going to be reflecting in a certain line. You could either call it the x-axis, or you could say it's the line y equals 0, or the x-axis. Either of those answers would be correct. And then our second piece of the transformation, like if I want to take A prime to A double prime, I can see that that is a translation. And I'm wanting to go up and right. So I'm going to translate. Pointy bracket here. It's going up 2, and it is going right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so that would be the rule for the translation. And this is our composition in our composition of function notation, our composition of transformations notation that we are aiming for. On the picture on the right, I can see that I started with ABC here in the top right. And I want to end with this triangle down here at the bottom. I can see that this triangle, it's like turned to the left, like it's sort of twisted. B is not at the top. It didn't like move to the very bottom, it moved to the side there. So that means we're going to be doing a rotation as part of our transformations. So looking from A to A prime, if I notice that it's turned over between there, I can connect A to the origin and the origin to A prime, and I can see how many degrees of a turn this is. Remember, you want to go counterclockwise. This is a rotation of 90 degrees about the origin. So for my composition, of triangle ABC, we are first rotating, and we're rotating about the origin, and I believe we're using a lowercase r for rotation, and we are going to be rotating 90 degrees about the origin. And the origin is like the default, and so they may not tell you that that is your center of rotation. And if they don't, you use the origin as your center of rotation. Then I can see from the A prime, B prime, C prime here to the new one, it looks like a translation if you're just glancing at it, but if you look closer, notice how A to A prime, A prime was at the bottom of the triangle, but A double prime is at the top. And so since that has changed, it's not a translation, it's actually a reflection. And so in order to find the line of reflection, what you want to do is you want to look at your the one you had and the one you're going to, and you want to like find a line that connects them and find the midpoint of that line. The midpoint of that line will be on the line of reflection. And so you could do that with each of your points that you're dealing with, and we can find a couple of points, and we can see that those are on the x-axis. So that's one way to find your line of reflection if you're struggling to find that. This is the x-axis, so we're going to be reflecting in the x-axis, which is also the line y equals 0. So you could have said it either way. And that is our notation for our composition of transformations for that problem. So again, if they don't give you that middle step drawn on the image, know that there are more than one way to write the answer for this. So if you're like working with somebody and you disagree, you could both be right. So just kind of look for that. And that is compositions.